Good morning. Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We have a busy, exciting show in store for you today. We're going to be talking with the Director of Public Safety here in Steuben County, Tim Marshall. We'll talk about Recruit New York, a couple other topics as well. We've got a couple national issues, more of the state budget. Unfortunately, we'll talk about where that's headed, where we're at there. A couple other stories as well. As always, you can contact me right there. That's the best way. And I've been receiving a lot of great emails and a lot of great texts. I know I keep saying that, but I can't thank you enough for the conversations we've had so far. We're just a little over a month into the program, and all of the kind words and all of the suggestions have been very, very helpful. If you have any ideas for upcoming guests, I'd really appreciate it. Or if you ever have any questions for our already booked guests, that's great too. Okay, starting off just quickly on maybe a topic that will bring a lot of our topics all in together. Will kind of encompass what we've been talking about, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level. And this actually coming from CNBC, so kind of surprising here. But public pessimism, I thought whatever, on the economy hit a new high. That's according to a new survey. Now, this does not bode well, of course, for President Biden, which surprisingly they mentioned in this article showing that President Biden's approval is sinking. We'll get to that in just a second. But according to, again, CNBC, 69%, it's a record, 69% of the public hold negative views about the economy, both now and in the future. So it's not just a current thing. When you go to the grocery store, you fill up your gas tank and you're getting hit so hard and you have that stress, you have that anxiety doing either. It's more so than even that. It's also in the future. Because of it, President Biden's approval rating fell by 2 percentage points to just 39%. And his disapproval rating rose by a point to 55% compared with the November survey. Well, things are clearly not getting better, no matter what the media, no matter what some of the politicians want to tell you. We all feel it. That's what's so interesting about inflation and the economy. You can have politicians put out as many press releases as they want, tell you everything you want to hear on the news, but when it boils down to it, you know what you're paying for your groceries. You know what you're paying for your day-to-day necessities. And it's getting almost impossible, and hence the next story coming from Financial Post. More U.S. consumers are falling behind on payments. That is another very troubling sign for, going back to that poll, the future. Consumers are starting to fall behind on their credit card and loan payments as the economy softens. That's a kind word. According to executives at the biggest U.S. banks. According to Wells Fargo Chief Financial Officer, I'm going to try this name. I'm sorry, Mike, if you're watching. Mike Santomassimo, he said at a conference call Friday, we've seen some consumer financial health trends gradually weaken from a year ago. Okay, so you've got some delinquency issues, got some non-payment issues becoming more prevalent, becoming more common. It's just a sign overall of the economy, and we know, no matter what they want to tell us, we know the economy is not good right now. Now, you tie that in with what we've been discussing now for weeks, which is the New York State budget. So you've got bad economy, and then you wonder how the New York State budget is going to affect us, whether it's bail reform, of course, what we talk about so often, but with higher taxes, money that we as residents just can no longer afford, these high taxes, and why so many people are leaving the state. So that's why I said I thought we'd start with that and kind of encompass it all with, I guess, bad news right off the bat, but important news. We can't hide our head in the sand. We can't, at a federal level, at a state level, we cannot just keep spending. We can't spend our way out of this, and that is why we are dealing with the financial troubles we are as individuals. It all directly affects us at the end of the day. So let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to tie in a couple other issues from earlier in the week and then get to some New York issues, federal. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. We're back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. Two quick updates. So first, yesterday we brought you the story about the secret, essentially Chinese police station in New York City. Well, more troubling news in relations to that. After the FBI busted the Chinese police station in New York City, 6 more have been exposed in the United States. Now, we heard from a congressman yesterday. His name escapes me, in a piece where he said this has kind of been common knowledge, which is troubling that it's common knowledge. But what's also troubling about this specific issue in New York City, the one that we brought to you yesterday, not even the other 6, that secret police station had made pretty substantial donations to Mayor Adams out of New York City and Governor Hochul. But the FBI helped shut down the Chinese police station in Manhattan after the arrest of 2 alleged operatives earlier this week. This coming from the New York Post. In addition to that, you've got Los Angeles and New York, of course. We have, where else? They ended up finding 6, and who knows how many more there are, of these secret police stations. Now, this goes back to what I've been saying since the show went on the air, and before that in my in my private life. It's just another move by China to look for control here in the United States, to find out things about us in the United States, spy essentially. This is, I believe, only going to get worse before it gets better. Not necessarily the police stations themselves, but just the way China is trying to infiltrate, in this case, our government. We talk about them wanting to become the world superpower. This from a spokeswoman for Safeguard Defender said, we found at least 4 listed in the U.S. by PRC, that's People's Republic of China, of course, public security authorities, plus flagged an additional 4 overseas Chinese service centers in the U.S. set up by the UFWD networks responsible for manning the stations. Now, that stands for United Front Work Department, a Chinese government agency that controls overseas ethnic and religious affairs. And that's one of the things that we learned about the New York City station specifically, that they were using their power to shut down pro-Chinese democracy activists in the United States. If this was known, like that gentleman suggested, that congressman suggested, how has this been ignored? Last year, the group held their annual gala dinner, meaning the secretive New York City police station, featuring New York City Mayor Eric Adams as their guest of honor, an event that was not disclosed on the mayor's official agenda. All very interesting. So you can, the New York Post has been doing some really great coverage on this. You can find out more elsewhere as well. We're going to be keeping a close eye on that because it's something of the, the larger picture that we've been talking about with this threat of China. One other update before we go to a break. No, I do have to go to a break. We'll try to give you another update. I know our guest, Tim Marshall, Director of Public Safety here in Steuben County, is going to join us in just a moment. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Right, we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. This is a story that goes back to perhaps one of the first broadcasts of Frankly Speaking, and we didn't have a final decision for you yet. So here it is. New York schools have banned calling teams various Native American names, Warriors, you see here, Chiefs, Braves, and using Native American mascots. Public school teams are being forced to change. The Board of Regents, which presides over the state's education department, voted to phase out Native American-related nicknames as part of a politically correct national effort to scrub racially insensitive imagery from sports teams. Nearly 60 school districts will be required to eliminate all use of indigenous-related mascots and imagery by the end of the 2024-2025 school year, or risk losing state aid. So that makes that decision pretty easy for these school districts. I'm surprised there's 60 school districts that this affects. It does not apply, needless to say, to tribal schools. That is not a part of their decision. The department does not anticipate that any team names, logos, or mascots that contain vestiges of prohibited team names, logos, or mascots will be considered acceptable. The New York State Department of Education spokesperson J.P. O'Hare wrote in an email. Now, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik weighed in on this, saying that it was wokeness run amok. And I would love your opinion on that. You've seen the article there now probably long enough. What is your take on this? I think some would argue that the education system maybe has bigger fish to fry, but this is what Elise Stefanik had to say. Upstate New York and the North Country take pride in our history, and forcing them to replace these historical mascots is prioritizing the far-left mob at the expense of our students' education. Again, this is Elise Stefanik. Schools should be focused on education, and while our local teachers and administrators are working tirelessly to educate our students after pandemic lockdowns deprive them of educational and developmental opportunities, the Hochul administration's priorities are entirely misplaced. And I think that's a very good point from Elise Stefanik. We know what the lockdowns, the school lockdowns, which lasted much longer than they should have, and there's some questions there. I know letters have been sent to find out more information from the school unions. Excuse me, I couldn't think of the word I was looking for. The teachers union, why that pressure campaign was put on to keep the schools in lockdown and virtual for so long. Continuing here, though, again, Elise Stefanik. As New Yorker's most senior member of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, I will stand against the far-left woke agenda and provide critical oversight to ensure schools in New York's 21st district have the funds to equip our next generation. All right. So what's there? The reason I keep that up, what is your opinion? We have the decision coming down from the Board of Regents. The New York schools are to ban calling teams such names as Warriors, Chiefs, Braves, or using any Native American mascot. Do you believe that's kind of like Elise Stefanik? Do you think maybe there's bigger issues that the Board of Regents and the education system should be looking at? We'll weigh in there. All right, coming up in just a moment, we're going to be talking with Tim Marshall. He's the Director of Public Safety here in Steuben County. He'll be coming up in just a moment, so stay with us. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our show, and I am being joined this morning by Tim Marshall. Tim, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, good morning, Frank. Appreciate being here.
Of course. I know this is a very big time for you because we're going to talk about Recruit New York, but for people that aren't familiar with you personally, you're the Director of Public Safety in Steuben County. What does that mean?
So I oversee the 911 center.
Okay.
But I also oversee emergency management, the fire coordinator's office, the EMS coordinator's office,
okay,
as well as radio communications. So it's really kind of all-encompassing for kind of public safety. You know, the only things that I don't have, public safety over is like sheriff.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, of course.
The DA also falls in there, and probation and things like that. But, that's not my thing. I'm handling mostly the emergency service side of things.
And I wanted to ask this before we get into Recruit New York. Are you having employment issues in your department? I know everybody we talk to, it seems like both sheriffs, Steuben and Chemung, they need corrections officers. Everyone that we talk to, they can't find anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big issues is dispatchers.
Okay.
Folks really don't even think about that aspect of the job.
Sure.
But somebody's got to be there to answer that 911 call. Mm-hmm. So we just recently are filling 2 new positions with provisional appointments. Okay. There are people that have already taken the test. We haven't got test results back.
Okay.
So we're waiting for test results to come, and then they'll get their permanent appointment. So there's right now we do not have, with these filling of these new 2 positions, will be full again. But people are in and out the door all the time in this area. How
can you even survive without someone? Someone has to pick up 911,
yeah,
right?
my dispatchers work long hours sometimes. Sure. They work typically an 8-hour shift, but it's not unusual for them to work 12 hours or even 16 hours. During rough times, on the weekends, holidays, things like that, vacation periods coming up. So it's always good to have extra people in the queue that we can.
Well, how should
tag for
people,
that.
if they're interested in that, what should they know? You said there's a test.
Yep. So it's a civil service exam.
Okay.
The county offers that. There's constant recruiting. We can take your application now,
Okay.
and then if something comes up, we can interview you, train you, put you on the floor. But again, the provisional appointment until you take that exam, pass that exam, and then you get the permanent appointment.
I feel like with these interviews lately, I've been putting on a job fair on the air.
Yeah,
Everybody's in
basically.
need,
Absolutely.
But let's talk about Recruit New York. This has been going on for quite a while, and it's I think it's a neat way for people that are on the fence if they want to maybe become a volunteer fireman or whatever. Why not go check out your fire department?
Right. The Firemen's Association State of New York started this several years ago, where it was one dedicated weekend that fire departments could recruit across the state. We've got 44 fire departments in Steuben County.
Is that right?
So, not all of them participate in Recruit New York. It's hit or miss. And some years, we have really good turnout. Some years we don't. So, this year, I believe the ones that I'm aware of, Painted Post Fire Department is running something on Saturday. Cooper's Fire Department is running something on Saturday as well, and East Campbell is doing something, and then up in Schuyler County, Beaver Dams is also doing something on Saturday. So, those are the places you can go. I believe Cohocton's having a chicken barbecue.
That's a good idea.
Sweeten
the pot a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Other fire departments may be doing stuff; they just haven't logged into the Recruit New York page. But the suggestion is if you see the doors open this weekend, stop in, say hello to your local firefighters, find out what it is they do, and see if it's something that you want to become part of.
I know they probably all are a little different, but what's a typical visit like? If I go to the fire department, is it just talking with the guys and the girls, or what?
Yeah, I mean, they can give you a tour of the apparatus, the facilities. They can let you try on the equipment.
Go down the fire pole.
Yeah, well,
No,
not
maybe
too
not.
many fire balls in Steuben County, but yeah, I mean, they'll let you, the jaws of life. You could pick that up. You can see how heavy it is. You can see how that piece of equipment, actually works. Various different departments do different things. Some have, demonstrations that they do with, like the jaws of life, or they stretch some hose lines and let people spray, spray the hoses and things like that, just to get a feel for things. Not sure what folks this weekend are planning, but those are the type of things that you could expect when you go out to do a Recruit New York weekend.
Have you found, because you mentioned 44 various stations throughout Steuben County, is volunteerism down?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Specifically in the EMS area.
Okay.
Our emergency medical services, those are the folks that come with the ambulance if you're hurt. We're really struggling with the number of emergency medical technicians, the EMTs, that are trained in that specific medical response. That training is long. It takes a lot of hours. It's like 160, 180 hours. It's multiple days of the week for multiple months to take that training. Steuben County's looking at ways to try to help enhance that. But we really need folks that, if you're interested in the medical field, always had an interest in that, join a local ambulance corps and become an EMT. Get that training, because we're really struggling when it comes to trying to get an ambulance out the door anymore.
Well, that's horrible. Just like we go back when you were saying about 911. I mean, these are people that you need when you need, right?
Absolutely. And the county's looking at options of what we can do to try to help supplement services. We're hiring right now a full-time emergency medical service coordinator.
Okay.
That'll go in my office to help us kind of coordinate training and coordinate agencies and try to put some things together to help. And we're also looking at trying to potentially put out an RFP or a bid for services to try and supplement. So, there's some things that we're trying to do at the county level to try and help this and stop no pun intended, stop the bleeding a little bit.
Really? And I would like to stress, Recruit New York, it's a great weekend. I think it's a really good idea. But I'm sure volunteers are always necessary. So don't just, if you think you missed this weekend, it's not too late.
Right, absolutely. I mean, typically the fire departments have a weekly training
Okay.
or monthly training, and they're around the fire station, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings is typically the nights that they train,
Okay.
depending on the area of the county you're from. So if you happen to drive by on a Tuesday night or a Monday night and the doors are open and there's a bunch of guys around, pull in, say hello, tell them that you're interested in maybe becoming a member, or you want a little more information, and then they can walk you through these steps in the process of what it takes to become a volunteer firefighter.
Well, because I'm sure people that are thinking about this have a lot of questions, and who better to ask than the source?
Right, exactly. And, the other step is that you don't have to be that guy that runs inside the building.
Right. Right.
There's all kinds of other jobs out there that are available for folks to become part of the volunteer fire service. Administrative positions. Become the secretary or the president of the board, a fire commissioner. You can help with fundraising. These type of things that if you can come and help them with a chicken barbecue or some sort of a dinner on the weekends to help them fundraise it, that's another day that they can spend home with their family that they don't have to be at the fire hall with.
That's a great point. So I think everybody should check out Recruit New York, even if you think that maybe you're not suitable for the position. You may very well be very vital to the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Fire police, those are the folks that direct traffic around an emergency scene. You don't have to have an awful lot of training for that. The Sheriff's Department and us are coordinating a fire police training course right now that's going on. I talked to the sheriff the other day. He's got, 15, 20 people in that class, teaching them how to, do a good job at directing traffic and managing traffic and those type of things. So it's, there's lots of opportunities.
There's something for everybody, it sounds like. How successful, in your experience, has Recruit New York been?
It's hit or miss. Some agencies will, pick up a couple of volunteers. Sometimes it's just families coming in with their kids just to see
Sure.
the fire trucks, and that's fine. That's what it's an open house, so it's an opportunity for the community to come in and see what it is the firefighters do. Maybe that young kid that comes in at 10 or 12, when they become 14, 15, 16 years old, has an interest of becoming a junior firefighter.
Yeah.
So that's how I got my start.
Oh, is that right?
Was as a junior firefighter. So junior firefighters are typically 14 to 18 years old that join the fire department, and they manage exterior operations, basically.
Okay.
So when the firefighters come out and need to change their air pack, their bottle, the junior firemen's change their bottles for them. They help with stretching hoses, getting tools and equipment around, those type of things. So there's something for everybody.
There really is.
And every age.
And that's, I think, I didn't realize that you could start that young being a junior firefighter. So 14, is that the...
Yeah. Well, depending on the department and their bylaws and the way that they run their operation, some are 14, some are 16. At 16, within some departments, you can begin taking your entry-level training.
Oh, okay.
So you can become, a full-fledged member of the fire department, but with limited duties.
Okay.
So, exterior operations. There's basically 2 levels of training. So you have your basic exterior operations course. So that is a course that teaches you, here's your gear, this is how you wear it, how do you put a ladder up, how do you stretch hose lines, those type of things that are all on the outside of the building. And then you do your interior firefighter operations, and these are the guys that want to go in and put the fire out.
Okay.
So they're, they concentrate on more of the fire dynamics
Okay.
of how the fire burns and how you want to put the water on the fire, various different techniques of ventilation, those type of things. So it's more technical when you get to that level.
I think it's interesting because the jobs that we've mentioned, whether you're watching the news or whatever, these are very scary events. Whether it's EMT, like you were saying, or the fire people themselves, these are life-changing events, and we need people to be there when some of us aren't able to be, right?
Right. I mean, one of the slogans that we've used in the fire service the last several years is, what if nobody answered the call?
Yeah.
And we're finding now that we're stretching farther and farther and farther away to get manpower to come in to help fight fires. So, for instance, the fire that we had in Corning here just last week, they have to stretch farther and farther and farther to get volunteers to come in to try and help fight that fire because there's just not enough people, specifically during the day.
Yeah.
So if you work nights and you're available to respond during the day, definitely check out the local fire department because we really need the help, specifically during the day when people are working.
Yeah, and you think about
or if you're retired.
Sure. You think about fire departments, or you think about emergency medical services. Every extra minute it takes for somebody to get there, think of how much damage can be done.
Right. Fire grows in size, every 1 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's constantly growing.
Yeah.
And you could see how rapidly these things take effect when you see devastating fires like we saw last week.
Well, and we've been talking about on the program about the lack of volunteerism in general in communities, not just in this instance. And what a great opportunity if someone's thinking, I want to get involved in the community, I want to make a difference. You can't make more of a difference than being, whether it's in the fire department or whether it's in emergency medical services.
Yeah, and don't think of that as, I've got to go in and fight the fire.
Right.
There's a lot of other jobs that are there and available for you that you can do.
What would you say to anybody, just before we go, that's thinking about going to one of these events? Should they bring anything or just be curious? Just ask.
Just come, ask questions, be engaged, try to open your mind and learn, how you could fit into this puzzle, because you may go in thinking, well, I want to do this,
right.
But then you realize, oh, this sounds kind of cool too.
Yeah.
So, maybe I'll try my hand at something a little bit different. Maybe it's just joining and becoming that administrative person that eventually works into maybe an exterior operations person, a driver.
Sure.
That's another one that's big, is having enough people to be able to drive the fire trucks.
Wow.
And we provide that training to you. So it's not like you've got to pay for that training. That training is all provided to you.
There's so much need.
Yeah.
It's so troubling. So recruitny.org. Even if you're just kind of thinking about it, go to recruitny.org to find out more information. And how should they contact you if maybe they're going to miss this weekend, they're out of town, but they want to get involved?
Certainly we are on Facebook where, we have a county website.
Sure.
Go to the county website. You can always call our office as well, 607-664-2910. Call our office, find out who your local fire chief is. We can put you in contact with those folks. You might not know exactly who your local fire department is.
Sure.
And specifically, people who live in the city, you're covered by a paid fire service. But that doesn't mean that the volunteers in the outskirts of the community won't take you as a member.
Okay.
Just because you live in the city, don't think that you can't become a member of the Corning Joint Fire District.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the Corning Joint Fire District takes people from the city as well.
I'm glad you
and the
mentioned
same
that.
thing with Painted Post and in those other areas. Not just because you live in one specific area means that you've got to join that fire department. Some of the other adjoining fire departments will take you depending on where you live.
Well, great. Well, Tim, thanks so much for being on the show this morning.
Yeah, thanks,
I hope it's
Frank.
successful. Did we
Appreciate it.
cover everything? We get
Yeah,
it?
I think we got everything.
All right, great.
All right.
Thanks, Tim. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. There it is again, the information for Recruit NY. That's this weekend, but as we said, there's such a obvious need after talking with Tim Marshall, and I really appreciate him giving us so much time, because when you think about 911, you think about emergency medical services, you think about your fire departments. Those are people you want well stocked. You want a lot of people in those offices. So that's why I'm glad that he could spend so much time with us to tell us about that need, which I'm sure doesn't sadly surprise us, as we talked about the poll again, that shows this lack of volunteerism, this lack of support for our community members. So that's why Recruit NY is so important. There's the website. Visit your local fire department this weekend. Say hi. Ask any questions. Become a part. And I guess to show you how naive I was, I didn't realize how many avenues you could go down if you volunteer. That you're not just, like he said, running into the building, right? That's what you think of. But they need, sounds like everything. Anything that you will have something in your life that you have to offer that they can use is what it sounds like. So please become a part of that. If you have any questions for me, or if you missed maybe the contact information, you want to reach out to Tim directly, there is our contact information, and I can get you in line with him. And as always, if you think there's someone that you would like to hear from on the program, like to be interviewed, find out about events like this with Tim and throughout the state, Recruit NY's throughout the state, please contact me. I would love to hear from you. Let's go back. We'll get that off the screen. Let's go back to some news of the day. We've been talking so much about the New York State budget. Let's see where we are today. Every day it's changing. We got a good solid wave there. Okay. So again, it goes back to the housing proposal. This coming from the Buffalo News, but I guess bail reform is no longer the issue. I don't know, because there is no transparency. I don't know if that's because they came to some type of agreement. If Hochul dropped it, I don't know. Time will tell. But Governor Hochul stood by her housing plan Tuesday amid reports that she is backing off a central component of the budget plan that would force local governments to meet targets for creating new homes. This has been pretty controversial. The governor's $227 billion spending proposal included an ambitious housing compact meant to drive development. Compact, that's a weird word. Housing compact meant to drive development and address New York's housing shortage by allowing the state to step in and approve projects if a municipality fails to meet certain building goals. What they are suggesting on the other side, both Democrats, and I'm not sure where the Republicans stand. They're not really invited to the table in negotiations. They want, and it's kind of typical, to offer incentives for areas, for local governments to encourage this housing. They want to almost pay them to do this. So this is where I guess the sticking point is. Sources, always sources, because there is no transparency, say one of the other elements the governor is pushing for is a replacement to the lapsed property tax breaks for developers who include affordable units, an abatement previously known as 421A. Exciting stuff there. Upstate towns would have to meet a target for our area of 1% growth every 3 years. Under Hochul's plan, the state would be able to override, this is important, override local zoning laws and approve projects in towns that fail to meet those targets. That's a little troubling. You think about issues you may have had in the past, not necessarily with zoning, but just in general, where something is built and there's confusion why it was built there, or maybe it changes the whole dynamic of the community. So what Governor Hochul is saying, her proposal would say, we decide, not the local government. You take that away from the local government, you're going to have a lot of trouble on your hands, and I don't know. That seems like an overreach, and maybe that's why they are not able to come to an agreement on that. Time will tell. I think, again, last we heard, they want to vote on something by Thursday, but that's going back to the transparency issue. We won't know what that is. We won't know what's in the budget. We won't know how much this has changed, what other additions or subtractions could have happened in the meantime in these last couple weeks. We have to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. And we're back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Mentioning the budget, this may be a good time to tie in with Governor Hochul in general. A few weeks ago, there was suggestion that Governor Hochul wanted to start, and not in just the Albany in general, start penalizing these pop-up marijuana stores, the sticker stores as they're called. Never really heard much more about that. Now we have this release. This is coming from longisland.com. Governor Hochul has unveiled the new statewide cannabis public education campaign, which is interesting because we see so much on TV and on billboards and things like that about marijuana, but this sounds a little different. It's called the Why Buy Legal New York. Why Buy Legal New York? That's a little wordy. It's a public education campaign promoting safer, informed, legal purchases of cannabis from licensed dispensaries in New York State, because they're having the issue now with the official licensed, in this case, dispensaries, as compared to the sticker type stores where we are not making the money that the dispensaries in New York State will supposedly bring us. To bolster the public health and safety of all New Yorkers, we are providing them with information they need to make informed decisions and enjoy cannabis responsibly. This is Governor Hochul. As we continue to build a healthier and more equitable cannabis market, that's important. We know the original licenses were given to people that had past criminal convictions for marijuana. I am proud to launch this important public education campaign to promote safer, legal purchase of cannabis from licensed dispensaries throughout the state. Now, this it's primarily digital campaign ad, so you may not have to see it as much as you would if you're watching TV, but it'll target cannabis consumers 21 years old and over, and includes various educational materials, such as the Guide to Safer Cannabis Consumption. These materials will provide information on how to find legal dispensaries in New York and tips on how to consume cannabis safely. I guess I already have a website, cannabis.ny.gov/consumer. So I don't know if this is a prolonged campaign where Governor Hochul will now go after the sticker stores. I have no idea. I did see today, and I thought this coming out of the Daily Mail, excuse me, out of the United Kingdom. And so I don't have it to pop up on the screen, but Americans are now spending more on legal weed than on chocolate. Now, I've heard people say in the past this has all been kind of an effort by government to dumb us all down with pushing this, pushing booze, whatever the case may be. And whatever your thought is on that, you can let me know. How do you like that plug? You can let me know why you think this is overtaken. Well, it kind of goes back to what we were saying with many of our guests, this idea of escapism, or especially when COVID hit, a lot of people finding perhaps unhealthy ways to kill time, for lack of a better word. But this, I mean, look at these numbers are staggering. Sales of marijuana from dispensaries topped $30 billion in the last year, compared to $18 billion of chocolate. So right now, and I like how they call it big tobacco. Remember, they have always called it that. I wonder if they'll start calling it big cannabis. I don't know. Tobacco sales in America, $52.7 billion. Coming in second, cannabis at $30 billion. It's only been legal for a little bit in certain areas. Chocolate at $18 billion, and then we go down from there. Craft beer, 7.9. It doesn't say beer in general, just craft beer. That's quite a jump. $30 billion in the last year. So maybe that's why Governor Hochul has started her campaign. We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We have a couple last minute things to get to before we wrap up the program this morning. I didn't want to talk too much about this because it's more of a New York City type issue, but we know that District Attorney Bragg indicted former President Trump. And since that time, there's been hearings on what Bragg has been doing in the city with the lawlessness and the crime rates and the like. Well, Michael Goodwin does a good job. Well, his last name's Goodwin, but he does do a phenomenal job. How's that with the New York Post? I would suggest he's not a Trump supporter, so that's what make some of his articles a little bit different, because as he said in this, he thought this was all going to be a dog and pony show, this look into Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney. But he said really it hasn't been that. What it's shown is how heartless some Democrats can be, that this is all about politics. He said, Manhattan representative, you remember this name, Jerry Nadler, for example, made the brain-dead mistake of citing declining homicide rates and decreased shootings in New York as proof that Judiciary Committee Republicans were using crime as a pretext to bully the district attorney. Telling grieving families the statistics say crime really isn't so bad in New York and it's worse elsewhere is tone deaf. Yes, he essentially said that in front of victims' families. But that's, as he said, what 30 years of Washington will do. The indifference of Nadler and his fellow travelers to the witnesses' pain and demands for justice made the hearing instructive. As a result, the Democrats snatched defeat from the jaws of victory, and the hearing was more than noteworthy. You can find this piece at the New York Post, as I mentioned. There's the headline. But the deniers were ice cold when warmth and compassion were called for, with Representative Daniel Goldman offering another example of this callousness. His attempt to label the day a waste of time earned him a much-deserved scolding from the angry mother of a murder victim. "Don't insult my intelligence," Madeline Brame snapped at Goldman. Goldman is an heir to the Levi Strauss fortune and a prolific stock trader whose district includes Lower Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn. "You're trying to insult me. I'm not aware of what's going on here." Yeah, it was not the dog and pony show the media wanted to make it out to be, that it was just going to be a way to, I guess, protect Trump. No, it actually offered a lot of startling statistics, a lot of really moving, at the same time troubling victim accounts, families of victims. So you can find that whole piece. I didn't want to read it to you word for word. That want to be fair to you or to Michael Goodwin. But I thought if that's something that you've been following, you may want to look for it there at the Post. We've got to take one last short break, then we're going to wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. So please stay right there. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. We are nearly out of time. So again, I want to thank Tim Marshall, the Director of Public Safety for Steuben County, for stopping in and telling us about Recruit New York. Find out more at recruitnewyork.org, but it's recruitny.org. So that's this upcoming weekend. And if you are interested at all in volunteering, talk to them. And as I said during the interview, and as Tim reiterated, if you can't make it this weekend, still reach out. They'd love to have you join. There's a serious need across the board for volunteers. We're going to have a busy show tomorrow and Friday, so I hope that you'll join us. As always, you can contact me if there's anything that you think I missed or anything you'd like to weigh on directly. That's the best way, right there. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.